The massive chamber filled with thousands of alien beings fell completely silent. Ambassador Kyung-ho stood alone at the center, his hands clasped behind his back. Above him, the holographic vote counter showed numbers that made his heart sink. 847 votes for expulsion, only 3 against, 12 abstentions. The Vorthak representative, a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms, stepped forward. His name was Thelmos, and his voice carried across the chamber like cold metal. The Galactic Council has reached its decision. Humanity is too dangerous for civilized space. Kyung-ho felt the weight of every eye in the chamber. Some aliens looked satisfied. Others seemed uncomfortable. A few appeared genuinely sad, but the decision was final. Your species fights too much, Thelmos continued. You ask too many questions. You change things that work perfectly fine. You refuse to follow proper procedures. The galaxy will be safer and more peaceful without humans. The ambassador took a deep breath. He had expected this outcome, but it still hurt. And what exactly does this mean for my people? Simple. All humans must return to your home solar system within 1 year. No human ships will be allowed to leave that system. No alien ships will enter it. All trade agreements are canceled. All technology sharing stops immediately. You are quarantined. Up in the observation deck, Captain Boram watched through the transparent walls. Her uniform bore the insignia of the United Earth Space Navy. Behind her stood her closest officers. Chief Engineer Taman shook his head in disgust. Navigator Heejin clenched her fists. They are making a huge mistake, Heejin whispered. Maybe, Boram replied quietly. Or maybe this is exactly what we needed. The captain had served in space for 15 years. She had seen how the other species treated humans, always watching them with suspicion, always complaining about human unpredictability, always trying to make humans fit into their rigid systems. Down in the chamber, Kyung-ho asked one final question. Will you at least allow humanitarian aid? Medical supplies? Food shipments during emergencies? Thelmos did not hesitate. Nothing goes in or out. This is complete isolation until your species learns to be civilized. Perhaps in a few hundred years we will reconsider. The session ended abruptly. Alien delegates began filing out, many of them chattering excitedly about their victory over the chaotic humans. Some looked relieved, as if a great burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Boram and her officers made their way to the docking bay where their ship waited. The UES Defiance was a beautiful vessel, sleek and powerful, but soon ships like this would never again travel beyond Earth's solar system. Captain, Taman said as they walked, what are your orders? We go home. We help with the evacuation. And then we prepare. Prepare for what? Boram smiled grimly. For whatever comes next. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. During that time, Boram watched as alien patrol ships began forming a massive blockade around the human solar system. Hundreds of vessels from dozens of species, all working together to keep humanity trapped. When they finally reached Earth, the evacuation was already underway. Millions of humans lived and worked throughout the galaxy. Scientists on research stations, traders on distant worlds, diplomats in alien capitals, families who had made their homes among the stars. All of them had to come back. The evacuation ships worked around the clock. Some aliens helped, mostly out of personal friendship rather than official policy, but most simply watched coldly as humanity gathered its scattered children. President Dongwu addressed the world from the Capitol building in Seoul. He was a calm man with gray hair and steady eyes. The entire planet watched his speech. My fellow humans, he began, today marks the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The Galactic Council believes we are too dangerous, too chaotic for their ordered society. They want us gone. He paused, letting his words sink in. Very well. If they want us isolated, we will be isolated. If they want us quarantined, we will be quarantined. But they have made one critical error. They assume that cutting us off from their technology and their knowledge will weaken us. The president's voice grew stronger. They do not understand humans. We do not become weaker when challenged. We become stronger. We do not give up when faced with impossible odds. We find a way. For thousands of years, humans have survived and thrived by adapting, by innovating, by refusing to accept that something cannot be done. Around the world, people watched with growing determination. They want a galaxy without humanity? They shall have it. And when they realize what they have lost, when they understand what they have given up, it will be too late. We will no longer be the same species they rejected. The speech ended, but its impact lasted for days. Across Earth and throughout the solar system, humans began to organize. Scientists formed research groups. Engineers started new projects. Military leaders developed defense plans. Dr. Rin, one of Earth's leading quantum physicists, gathered her team at the Advanced Research Institute. "The aliens think they have all the best technology," she told them. "They think cutting us off from their knowledge will stop our progress. They are wrong." She activated a holographic display showing various alien technologies. "We have been studying their methods for decades. We understand their principles, but we have always been limited by their rules, their safety protocols, their fear of change. Now we are free to explore new possibilities." Young engineer Jin Woo raised his hand. "What about resources? Many of our colonies depended on trade with alien worlds. Then we find new ways," Aaron replied. "We dig deeper into asteroids. We build better recycling systems. We develop technologies they never imagined. Humans are resourceful. We will make do." As the weeks passed, the last human evacuation ships returned home. The alien blockade tightened. Communication arrays were shut down. Trade routes were closed. For the first time in over a century, humanity was completely alone. But something unexpected happened. Instead of despair, there was excitement. Instead of fear, there was determination. Freed from alien oversight and alien expectations, human creativity began to flourish in ways it never had before. Captain Boram stood on her ship's bridge, looking out at the alien blockade in the distance. "They think they have caged us," she said to her crew, "but they have actually set us free." The galaxy settled into its new routine. Without humans to worry about, alien civilizations returned to their comfortable, predictable patterns. Trade resumed normal schedules. Scientific research followed established protocols. Everything was orderly and peaceful, exactly as they wanted it. But deep in the solar system, behind the blockade, humanity was changing. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. 5 years had passed since the quarantine began. The alien blockade around the solar system remained strong, with patrol ships monitoring every possible escape route. But something strange was happening. The aliens noticed an unusual silence from the human system. There were no distress calls, no desperate messages begging for readmission to galactic society, no attempts to break through the blockade. Nothing at all. This worried some alien leaders, but most dismissed it. Humans were probably still adjusting to their isolation. Eventually, they would learn their lesson and ask politely to rejoin civilization. They had no idea how wrong they were. Dr. Rin stood in her laboratory deep beneath the surface of Mars. Around her, machines hummed quietly as they worked on projects that would have amazed the galaxy's greatest scientists. She was no longer just a quantum physicist. She had become the director of the Terra Advanced Research Initiative, the most ambitious scientific program in human history. "Status report," she said to her assistant, a young woman named So Young. "The quantum fabricators are operating at 340% efficiency compared to standard galactic models," So Young replied, checking her tablet. "Energy costs have dropped by 60%, and we have successfully created materials that do not exist anywhere else in known space." Aaron smiled. Without alien safety regulations and research limitations, human scientists had been free to explore dangerous and radical ideas. The results were extraordinary. "Show me the latest test results from the matter conversion project." So Young activated a holographic display. "We can now convert pure energy into any element we need. The process is completely clean and produces no waste. We have essentially solved the resource shortage problem." This was revolutionary. While aliens still mined asteroids and planets for materials, humans could now create whatever they needed from starlight and cosmic radiation. They had turned the quarantine from a punishment into an advantage. Meanwhile, in a secure facility on Earth's moon, Jin Woo worked on a very different project. He was no longer just an engineer. He had become the coordinator of what humans secretly called the Intelligence Initiative. "How many probe missions have we completed?" he asked his team leader, Kyung-soo. 47 successful insertions into alien space, Kyung-soo reported. "Our stealth technology is working perfectly. They cannot detect our ships at all." Jin Woo nodded with satisfaction. While the aliens thought they had humans completely isolated, small human ships had been sneaking through the blockade for years. These vessels were invisible to alien sensors, using technology based on quantum phase shifting that no other species had discovered. "What have we learned?" It is fascinating and disturbing, Kyung-soo said, pulling up data files. Alien technology has not advanced at all since the quarantine began. In fact, some species seem to be regressing. They are using the same ships, the same computers, the same methods they used decades ago. Why? We think it is because they have become too comfortable. Without humans to compete with, without our questions and challenges, they have stopped innovating. They are coasting on old achievements. This information was passed to Admiral Seung-won, who now commanded humanity's secret defense fleet. The ships under his command did not look like the old human vessels that aliens remembered. These were sleek, advanced craft that could outmaneuver and outgun anything in the galactic fleet. Our technological advantage is growing every day, he reported to President Dongwu during their weekly security briefing. But we need to be careful. We are not ready for open conflict. Conflict is not the goal, Dongwu replied. We are proving a point. They wanted us gone because they thought we were dangerous and chaotic. But without us, they are stagnating. They need us more than they realize. The president was older now, but his determination had only grown stronger. Under his leadership, humanity had not just survived isolation, they had thrived. Captain Boram, now commanding a squadron of the new stealth ships, regularly patrolled the edges of the solar system. Her vessel, the UES Shadow, was a marvel of human engineering. It could become completely invisible, travel faster than any alien ship, and slip through their blockade like it was not even there. Captain, her navigator Hyejin called out, we are detecting some unusual activity in the Vega sector. What kind of activity? Several alien mining operations have gone dark. No communications, no ship movements. It is like they just stopped working. Boram frowned. This was the third report like this in recent months. Any signs of attack? Sabotage? None. The facilities appear intact. The workers just seem to have left. Unknown to Boram and her crew, this was the beginning of something the aliens would later call the Hollow. But the symptoms were subtle at first, and most alien leaders ignored the early warning signs. Back on Earth, the changes were remarkable. Cities had been rebuilt with incredible efficiency. New technologies made life easier and more comfortable than ever before. The planet was cleaner, the air was purer, and energy was unlimited. But the most important changes were in the people themselves. Freed from alien expectations and limitations, humans had rediscovered their creativity and ambition. Art flourished. Music evolved. Literature reached new heights. Scientific breakthroughs happened almost daily. Young people who had grown up during the quarantine were different from previous generations. They thought bigger, dreamed larger, and refused to accept that anything was impossible. They had never been told that something was not the human way, or too dangerous for primitive minds. In the underground research facilities, teams worked on projects that would have terrified alien scientists: dimensional manipulation, time dilation fields, consciousness transfer, artificial gravity that did not require massive machinery, faster-than-light communication without quantum entanglement. We are not just catching up to galactic technology, Aaron told her research council. We are surpassing it. We are developing capabilities they never imagined. Taemin, now chief of dimensional engineering, had achieved something that every species in the galaxy considered impossible. His team had built small-scale dimensional barriers, pockets of space that existed slightly outside normal reality. The applications are limitless, he explained to a group of military engineers. We can hide entire fleets in dimensional pockets. We can store unlimited supplies in spaces smaller than a closet. We can even make our planets temporarily unreachable if necessary. But perhaps the most significant development was psychological. Humans had always been seen as the chaotic, unpredictable species. Other aliens were more organized, more logical, more disciplined. But isolation had taught humans something important about themselves. They were not chaotic because they were primitive. They were creative because they refused to accept limitations. They were unpredictable because they constantly sought new solutions. They were dangerous because they never stopped growing. Dr. Minho, the galaxy's former expert on interspecies psychology, had spent the quarantine years studying the human condition. His research revealed something profound. We assumed that humans needed other species to provide structure and guidance, he wrote in his classified report. But the opposite is true. Other species need humans to provide inspiration and change. We are not the students in this relationship. We are the teachers. As the 5th year of quarantine ended, humanity had transformed itself completely. They had advanced technologies, unlimited resources, and capabilities that surpassed anything in galactic civilization. But they also had something else: patience. They were in no hurry to reveal themselves. Let the galaxy enjoy its peace and order. Let alien species continue their comfortable, predictable routines. Humans would wait and watch and continue to grow. Because when the time came to rejoin galactic society, they would not be returning as the same species that had been expelled. They would be something new, something unprecedented, something that would change the galaxy forever. The aliens wanted a galaxy without humanity. Soon they would have their wish, and they would discover what they had truly lost. The first sign of trouble came from the Kepler mining sector. 3 Vorthak mining colonies, each housing thousands of workers, simply went silent on the same day. No distress signals, no emergency broadcasts, nothing. Commander Velcron of the Galactic Council Security Force led the investigation team. When they arrived at the first colony, everything looked normal from space. The facilities were intact, power was flowing, ships were docked properly. But when they went inside, they found something that chilled them to their core. The colony was completely empty. "This makes no sense," Velcron told his team as they searched the abandoned buildings. "Where did everyone go?" His security chief, a methodical Corval named Quintel, checked the computer systems. According to the logs, production continued normally until 800 hours 3 days ago. Then all work simply stopped. No alarms, no emergency protocols, nothing. They found the security recordings and watched in amazement. The footage showed thousands of Vorthak workers going about their daily routines. Then, at exactly the same time, they all stopped what they were doing. Tools were put down carefully. Machines were turned off properly. And then every single worker walked calmly to the spaceport. "Look at their faces," Quintel said, rewinding the footage. "They look empty." It was true. The workers showed no emotion, no urgency, no purpose. They moved like people in a dream, boarding transport ships with vacant expressions. The ships had carried them away, leaving the colony perfectly preserved but completely lifeless. The same thing had happened at all 3 colonies. Thousands of Vorthak workers had simply abandoned their posts and left, taking nothing with them except the clothes they wore. When Velcron reported back to the council, the response was confused and worried. "Have you found the missing workers?" asked Director Thelmos. "Yes, sir. They returned to their home worlds and are now living with relatives. But when we interview them, they give the same answer. They say they suddenly realized their work had no meaning, so they saw no point in continuing." This was deeply disturbing news. Vorthaks were known throughout the galaxy for their dedication to duty and their strong work ethic. For them to abandon their responsibilities was unthinkable. But this was only the beginning. Over the following months, similar incidents spread across the galaxy. Zephyrian research stations were abandoned by scientists who claimed their work felt pointless. Corval manufacturing plants shut down when workers stopped coming to their jobs. Tillian trade ships drifted empty through space after their crews decided commerce had no real purpose. At first, these were isolated incidents that the Council tried to keep secret. But the pattern was growing too large to hide. Entire populations were falling into what alien psychologists began calling the hollow, a state of complete loss of motivation and purpose. Dr. Quintel, who had left security work to study this phenomenon, presented his findings to an emergency council session. "The symptoms are consistent across all affected species," he reported. "Depression, feelings of meaninglessness, loss of interest in activities that once brought satisfaction. But it is not a disease. It appears to be a psychological condition." "What is causing it?" demanded Thelmos. "We are not certain, but we have identified some patterns. The condition spreads faster in communities that had significant contact with humans before the quarantine. Species that worked closely with humans are affected more severely than those who had minimal interaction." This information was troubling, but the Council did not want to admit any connection to their decision to expel humanity. "Humans were clearly a negative influence," insisted Veltar, the Corval representative. "This proves that their chaotic nature was infecting other species with psychological instability." But Dr. Quintel disagreed. "Actually, sir, the evidence suggests the opposite. Areas with former human presence are not becoming chaotic. They are becoming too ordered, too predictable. It is as if something that provided balance has been removed." What the Council did not know was that Jin Wu and his intelligence teams had been studying galactic psychology for years. Hidden observation posts throughout alien space had been monitoring the emotional and mental health of various species. The data they collected was fascinating and disturbing. The aliens are losing their sense of purpose, Jin Wu reported to President Dongwu. For centuries, they defined themselves in relation to us. We were the chaotic ones, so they were the ordered ones. We were the unpredictable ones, so they were the stable ones. We were the aggressive ones, so they were the peaceful ones. And now they have no one to compare themselves to. Without humans to react against, they are discovering they have no independent identity. Their entire civilization was built on being not human rather than being something positive in its own right. Dr. Arin had reached similar conclusions through her analysis of alien communication intercepts. They created a stable, peaceful galaxy by suppressing the very qualities that drive progress and growth. Curiosity, risk-taking, the willingness to challenge established ideas. They labeled these things as human characteristics and rejected them. But those qualities are not specifically human, added Dr. Minho, who had been studying comparative psychology. They are the traits of any healthy, growing civilization. By rejecting us, they rejected the parts of themselves that kept them vital and moving forward. The evidence was everywhere. Alien art had become repetitive and uninspired. Scientific research had slowed to a crawl. Technological innovation had virtually stopped. Even entertainment had grown stale and predictable. Young aliens, especially those who had never met humans, were the most severely affected. They grew up in a galaxy where everything was predetermined, where all the big questions had been answered, where there were no mysteries left to explore. They saw no point in striving for anything because their elders had already achieved perfect order and stability. Meanwhile, humanity continued to thrive in isolation. Their research had advanced to the point where they could monitor galactic communications without detection. They watched as alien civilization slowly crumbled from within. "Should we reveal ourselves?" asked Admiral Sungwon during a military briefing. "We could end this suffering." Captain Boram, now commanding the entire stealth fleet, shook her head. "They expelled us because they thought we were dangerous. If we return now, they will blame us for their problems. They need to understand the truth for themselves." Taemin had been working on humanity's ultimate defense project. "The dimensional barrier prototype is ready for full-scale testing," he announced. "We can place our entire solar system in a pocket dimension, making it completely unreachable from normal space." This technology represented the pinnacle of human achievement during the quarantine years. While aliens had stagnated, humans had literally learned to step outside reality itself. "How long can we maintain the barrier?" asked President Dongwu. "Indefinitely with our current power systems. We can emerge whenever we choose or remain hidden for centuries if necessary." The decision was made. If the galaxy wanted to continue without humanity, humans would give them exactly what they wanted: complete separation, no possibility of contact or interference. The dimensional barrier was activated during the 8th year of quarantine. From the perspective of alien observers, the human solar system simply vanished. Their ships, their planets, their sun, everything disappeared as if it had never existed. Panic spread through the alien blockade fleet. Emergency messages were sent to the Council. Search teams scoured the area where the solar system had been, finding nothing but empty space. "They are gone," reported Fleet Commander Zeklos. "Completely gone. We do not know how or where." The Council met in emergency session. "Did they destroy themselves?" wondered Veltar. "Impossible," replied Dr. Quintel. "The energy signature was unlike anything we have ever seen. They did not die. They escaped. But to where?" The truth was that humanity had not gone anywhere. They were still in the same location, but existing in a slightly different layer of reality. They could see out, but aliens could not see in. They could emerge at any time, but chose to remain hidden. "Let them panic," said President Dongwu as he watched alien ships desperately searching empty space. "Let them realize what they have lost. When they are ready to admit their mistake, we will be here." But as the years passed and the hollow continued to spread, it became clear that the galaxy might not survive long enough to learn its lesson. Without humans to provide the spark of chaos and creativity that drove progress, alien civilizations were slowly dying from the inside out. The Council had gotten exactly what they wanted: a galaxy without humanity. But they were discovering that such a galaxy was not worth having. 3 more years had passed since humanity vanished behind their dimensional barrier. The galaxy was dying. Entire star systems now drifted in darkness, their populations overcome by the hollow. The great trade routes that had connected thousands of worlds for millennia lay empty. Automated systems kept basic functions running, but there was no one left with the will to maintain them. In the council chambers, only a fraction of the original delegates remained. Many species had simply stopped sending representatives, seeing no point in galactic government when their own civilizations were collapsing. Director Thelmos sat alone in his office, staring at reports that painted an increasingly grim picture. The Vorthak Confederation, once spanning hundreds of worlds, was down to a few dozen functioning colonies. The mighty Corval manufacturing empire had produced nothing new in over a year. Even the peaceful Tillian traders had abandoned commerce, their fleets gathering dust in empty spaceports. "Sir," his aide Melkor entered quietly. "Dr. Quintel is here with the final psychological assessment." The doctor looked exhausted. His research into the Hollow had consumed him for years, but the conclusions he had reached were devastating. "The projection models are clear," Quintel began without preamble. "Complete civilizational collapse within 18 months. The psychological damage has passed the point of natural recovery." "Explain," Thelmos said, though he dreaded the answer. Galactic society was more dependent on humanity than we realized. They were not just another species in our civilization. They were the engine that drove our civilization. Their questions forced us to find answers. Their chaos forced us to create order. Their aggression forced us to develop peace. Quintel activated a holographic display showing psychological profiles from across the galaxy. Without humans to react to compete with, to be challenged by, we have discovered that our own cultures were hollow. We defined ourselves by what we were not, rather than by what we were. Remove the contrast and there is nothing left. The truth was devastating in its simplicity. For thousands of years, alien species had built their identities around being more civilized than humans. They were more logical, more peaceful, more orderly, more stable. But these were all negative definitions. They were what humans were not. "What about the younger generations?" Thelmos asked desperately. "Those who never knew humans? They are the worst affected. They have grown up in a universe where all problems have been solved, all questions answered, all challenges overcome. They see no purpose in existence because their elders have created a perfect galaxy with no room for growth or change." The meeting was interrupted by urgent news from Admiral Velkron. "Sir, we have a potential solution. My science teams believe they can break through the dimensional barrier that the humans created." "How?" "By overloading it with quantum energy. We would need to coordinate the entire remaining fleet, but it might work." This sparked the first real debate the Council had seen in months. Some argued for immediate action. Others worried about the consequences of forcing contact with humanity. "What if they refuse to help us?" asked Veltar. "What if they are angry about the quarantine?" "Then we die," Thelmos replied bluntly. "But if we do nothing, we die anyway. At least this way we have a chance." The operation took 6 months to prepare. Every functioning ship in the galaxy was gathered around the coordinates where the human solar system had vanished. Thousands of vessels from dozens of species, representing the last organized effort galactic civilization might ever make. But when they fired their combined weapons at the dimensional barrier, something unexpected happened. Instead of breaking through, their energy was absorbed and redirected. The barrier actually grew stronger. "It is not working," reported Fleet Commander Zeklos. "The barrier is adapting to our attacks. It is learning." What the aliens did not know was that Taemin and his engineering teams were watching their every move. The dimensional barrier was not just a wall. It was an intelligent system that could analyze and counter any attempt to breach it. "They are trying to force their way in," Taemin reported to President Dongwu. "Should we allow it?" "Not yet. They still do not understand what they did wrong. They think this is just a technical problem to be solved." Inside their dimensional sanctuary, humanity had continued to evolve. Their technology now surpassed anything in galactic history. They had solved problems that alien scientists considered impossible. They had created art and music and literature that would have astounded the galaxy. They had become something new, but they had also been watching the decline of galactic civilization with growing concern. Many humans felt sympathy for the suffering aliens even after years of isolation. "They are dying out there," Captain Boram said during a military briefing. Entire species are facing extinction because of their own stubbornness. Should we help them? Asked Admiral Xiongwan. Help them how? Replied Dr. Arin. By returning to the galaxy and pretending nothing happened? By allowing them to think that humans exist to serve their psychological needs? The debate raged for weeks among human leadership. Some argued for immediate intervention. Others insisted that the lesson must be learned completely, or the same situation would repeat in the future. Meanwhile, the alien situation continued to deteriorate. The failed attempt to break the dimensional barrier had exhausted their resources and shattered their remaining hope. The hollow spread faster than ever, claiming entire worlds in a matter of days. In desperation, Dr. Quintel proposed a radical experiment. We cannot bring the humans back, he told the emergency council session. But we can try to replicate their effect on our society. How? By introducing artificial chaos into our systems, random changes to established procedures, unexpected challenges to accepted wisdom, deliberate disruption of normal patterns. It was a desperate plan, but they had no alternatives. Across the galaxy, the remaining functioning governments began implementing chaos protocols. Rules were changed randomly. Established procedures were deliberately disrupted. Citizens were encouraged to question authority and challenge conventional thinking. The results were mixed. Some populations responded positively to the artificial stimulation, but most found the forced chaos hollow and meaningless. It was like trying to make someone laugh by telling them a joke was funny. The effect could not be forced. It is not working, Quintel admitted after months of trying. True creativity cannot be artificially induced. It must come from within, driven by genuine curiosity and the willingness to take real risks. As the situation grew more desperate, some alien leaders began to consider the unthinkable, admitting they had been wrong about humanity. What if we formally apologize? Suggested Veltar during a private meeting. What if we acknowledge that the quarantine was a mistake? And then what? Replied Thelmos. Even if we could contact them, why would they return? We treated them like criminals. We told the entire galaxy that they were too dangerous for civilized society. Because they are better than us, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Dr. Quintel entering the room. His words hung in the air like a challenge. That is the truth we have been afraid to admit. Humans are not more chaotic or dangerous than us. They are more creative, more adaptable, more willing to grow and change. We expelled them because we were jealous of qualities we could not match. The admission was painful but liberating. For the first time in years, the alien leaders began to discuss their situation honestly. So what do we do now? Asked Veltar. Thelmos stood and walked to the large window overlooking the council chambers. Most of the seats were empty now, representing civilizations that no longer existed or had lost the will to participate. We tell the truth, he said finally. To everyone, we admit that we were wrong, that we destroyed our own galaxy out of pride and fear, and then we beg for forgiveness. It was not much of a plan, but it was all they had left. The galaxy was dying and only humanity could save it. The question was whether humanity would choose to save a civilization that had rejected them so completely. The answer to that question lay hidden behind a dimensional barrier, in a solar system that existed just beyond the reach of alien desperation. The galaxy was ending not with violence or catastrophe, but with a slow, quiet surrender to meaninglessness. Dr. Quintel stood in the mostly empty council chambers, reading the final reports. 78% of all sapient species had succumbed to the hollow. Entire civilizations had simply stopped. Their cities still functioned, powered by automated systems. Their ships still flew predetermined routes, but the beings who had built these wonders no longer cared enough to maintain them. The Korval homeworld went silent yesterday, reported the chamber's last remaining aide, a young Tillian named Sekvor. That makes 12 major worlds this month alone. Quintel nodded sadly. He had spent years studying the hollow, and now he was watching it claim the galaxy in real time. Any word from the remaining council members? Director Thelmos is preparing the final broadcast. The others? Sekvor gestured helplessly. The others have gone home to be with their families at the end. In his private chambers, Thelmos worked on what would be his last official act as council director. Around him, the walls displayed images from across the galaxy. Empty cities, abandoned space stations, drift ships carrying populations that had lost the will to steer them. The irony was crushing. They had expelled humanity to create a more peaceful, orderly galaxy. Instead, they had created a galaxy so peaceful and orderly that it no longer had any reason to exist. He activated the emergency broadcast system, knowing that few would hear it. Most communication networks had failed as their operators simply walked away from their posts. But perhaps someone would listen. Perhaps someone would remember. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began, his voice echoing through empty chambers. "This is Director Thelmos of the Galactic Council, making what will likely be our final official transmission." He paused, gathering strength for what he had to say. "We were wrong. About everything. About humans. About ourselves, about what civilization requires to survive. We believed that order and stability were the highest values. We thought that removing chaos and unpredictability would create paradise." The admission felt like a physical weight lifting from his shoulders. Instead, we removed the very essence of life itself. Growth requires change. Progress requires challenge. Civilization requires the willingness to question, to risk, to sometimes fail. By expelling humanity, we expelled these qualities from our galaxy. In the desperate hope that someone might still be listening, governments across the galaxy began broadcasting everything they could find of human culture, music compositions that humans had shared during their time in galactic society, art pieces that decorated alien museums, literature that had been translated into thousands of languages, scientific papers that had challenged conventional thinking. The effort had limited success. The constant exposure to human creativity did slow the spread of the hollow in some areas. Populations that immersed themselves in human art and music showed signs of recovery. But it was too little, too late for most. They created all of this during their brief time among us, Thelmos continued in his broadcast, and we threw it away because we were afraid of what it represented. We were afraid of change, of uncertainty, of the possibility that we might be wrong about fundamental assumptions. He looked directly into the camera, speaking to an audience that might no longer exist. "Humanity, if you can somehow hear this message, we understand now what we lost when we lost you. You were never the disease that infected our civilization. You were the cure that kept us growing, learning, becoming more than we were." Deep within their dimensional sanctuary, President Dongwu watched the alien broadcasts with a mixture of sadness and resignation. He was older now, his hair completely white, but his mind remained sharp. Around him in the observation chamber, the other human leaders watched as alien civilizations faded one by one. "They finally understand," said Dr. Aaron, now elderly but still brilliant. But the understanding comes too late. Captain Boram, her uniform bearing new insignia representing the dimensional fleet, studied the tactical displays. "Our monitoring stations report that less than 20% of galactic civilization remains functional. Most of those are automated systems running without supervision. Should we intervene?" asked Admiral Sung-won. "We have the technology to break through the barrier from our side. We could return to normal space and try to help." The question had been debated for months. Humanity now possessed capabilities that seemed like magic compared to traditional galactic technology. They could heal psychological trauma with advanced neural therapy. They could restore collapsed civilizations with matter fabricators and dimensional engineering. They could rebuild the galaxy in a matter of years. But would their return solve the fundamental problem or just postpone it? "The aliens need to want to be saved," said Dr. Minho, whose studies of galactic psychology had become more relevant than ever. "If we return as saviors, we become their new dependency. They will rely on us instead of learning to rely on themselves." Jinwoo, now Director of Dimensional Intelligence, had been monitoring alien communications for years. "The broadcasts are changing," he reported. "They are not just apologizing anymore. They are beginning to analyze their own mistakes, trying to understand what went wrong." This was significant. For the first time since the quarantine began, aliens were engaging in genuine self-reflection rather than simply reacting to external circumstances. Young engineer So Young, who had grown up during the isolation years, raised an important point. "What about the younger generations of aliens? The ones born after we disappeared? They have never known a galaxy with humans. They are not responsible for the mistakes of their elders." This struck at the heart of the moral dilemma. Millions of young aliens were suffering for decisions made before they were born. They deserved a chance at a meaningful life, regardless of their species' past actions. Taemin, whose dimensional engineering had made humanity's isolation possible, offered a potential solution. The barrier can be selectively permeable. We could allow limited contact without full reintegration. Cultural exchanges, educational programs, gradual reintroduction of human perspectives. A probationary period, asked President Dongwu. More like a healing process. We help them recover from the hollow while they learn to value qualities like creativity and curiosity for themselves, not just because humans possess them. The debate continued for weeks. Finally, a decision was reached that balanced humanity's desire to help with the need for aliens to learn independence. The dimensional barrier would remain, but small openings would be created. Human teachers, artists, and scientists would be allowed to visit alien worlds, not as returning exiles, but as ambassadors of possibility. They would share knowledge and inspiration while carefully avoiding creating new dependencies. Meanwhile, young aliens who showed genuine curiosity and creativity would be invited to visit the human dimensional sanctuary, not to stay permanently, but to experience a society built on growth and change rather than stability and order. It will take generations, Dr. Aaron warned. Recovering from the hollow is not just a matter of exposure to new ideas. It requires rebuilding the psychological foundations of entire civilizations. Then we take generations, President Dongwu replied. Humanity learned patience during our isolation. We can wait as long as necessary for the galaxy to heal. The first cultural exchange began 6 months later. A small group of human artists and musicians emerged from the dimensional sanctuary to visit a Corval colony that had shown signs of recovery. The aliens who greeted them were different from those who had voted for the quarantine years earlier. They were humbler, more open to new experiences, more willing to admit uncertainty. "We have much to learn," said Veltar, the former council member who now led the recovery efforts on his homeworld. "Not just about creativity and innovation, but about living with purpose in an uncertain universe." The human delegation, led by a young composer named Unji, smiled warmly. "Learning is something we can do together. But the purpose one, that has to come from within yourselves." As the years passed, the galaxy slowly began to heal. The process was neither quick nor simple. Some species recovered faster than others. Some rejected human influence entirely and continued to fade. But gradually signs of new life began to appear. Alien art started to evolve beyond traditional forms. Scientific research resumed with new questions and approaches. Young beings across the galaxy began to dream of futures that were different from their past. Humanity remained partially isolated, emerging only when invited and always returning to their dimensional sanctuary. They had learned that being needed was not the same as being valued, and that true friendship required mutual respect rather than dependency. The galaxy that emerged from this long healing process was different from what had come before. It was less stable but more vibrant, less predictable but more alive, less perfect but more real. And somewhere in the dimensional spaces between realities, humanity watched and waited and occasionally smiled. They had wanted a galaxy that could appreciate chaos and creativity and growth. Now slowly they were getting one. The aliens had gotten their galaxy without humanity, but they had also learned that such a galaxy was not worth having. The real gift was not humanity's return,